Hi there, I'm Mike Jones from FCSI's Foodservice Consultant Magazine. Welcome to this FCSI panel hosted here at the FoodSpace headquarters in Boise, Idaho. This particular episode is supported by Vollrath, many thanks to them. And today we're going to be addressing the challenges, but also the opportunities and the solutions involved in the electrification of the food service industry. To do that, I'm delighted to be joined by three exceptional panelists. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and we can get going. Paris, let's start with you first, please.
Yes, Paris Dreibelbis. Chef, corporate product training manager at Vollrath. Been with the company about 9 months. Excited to be here, so thank you very much for having me.
Welcome. Thank you, Paris. Thank you for your support. And Dave?
I'm Dave Ochs. I'm the food programs manager for Appétit, and I work with the Adobe account primarily, helping implement new technologies, open new kitchen concepts, and excited to be here.
Welcome. Thank you, Dave. And Joe?
Hey, Mike. Joe Schumaker of FoodSpace. I'm the founder and CEO of FoodSpace, and luckily I've had the pleasure of working with Dave on the Adobe North Tower project, which was a lot of fun, and done quite a few electrification projects over the years.
Fantastic. Well, looking forward to hearing about those, and thank you very much for hosting, Joe, today. Dave, let's start with you first, please. Can we get some context here from the operator's purview? Let us know how much traction you think the electrification of kitchens is currently getting in North America. Is it still very much a coastal thing, California, East Coast, or is it much more pervasive than that? What's the kind of the state of play as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, I mean, I think the trend line's definitely moving towards electrification across America. It's certainly more concentrated on the coasts. We've got a lot of regulations and sort of rules that are happening either at the state level or locally. It's really pushing people towards electrifying their kitchens. But all in all, you think about the restaurant industry, a lot of these trends start on the coasts anyway, right? Different types of restaurant concepts and trending food types and things like that. So that's really how I sort of see this happening, is there's incubators happening in the coasts that's sort of pushing out throughout the country. Think about it a little bit like a pendulum swing from the wood-fired cooking trend that happened a few years ago, right? So that's starting to really get a lot of traction.
Yeah. Great context. Thank you very much, Dave. Joe, let's get your view then. Do you concur with that? What's the kind of consultant take on that? And also, maybe tell us a little bit about what you feel is driving that trend.
Yeah, 100%. Well, so I think there's a couple things, right? And we've seen, and again, we've talked a little bit about COVID and where COVID has affected this. But to Dave's point about the pendulum, the swing was really fast and furious in 2018 and 2019, 2017, 2018, 2019, coastally.
Yeah.
And then we hit the pause button. In fact, his project, right? We hit the pause and then we continued. Some projects that we're planning on electrifying didn't,
right?
Coming out of COVID. Ironically, we're in the process of designing, and the construction is just about to start on the 5th largest all-electric kitchens in North America, right here in Boise, Idaho. So I don't know, man. I think the pendulum has swung. As far as what's driving it, I think there's corporations, especially in the B&I sector, are really figuring out how they want to put out their message of sustainability.
Yes.
And there is a belief that electrifying their buildings is a sign to the public that that is a sustainable thought process. Mm-hmm. The reality is they're still buying a lot of their electricity that we're burning fossil fuels to get. So it's a politically charged conversation. It's an opinion delicate conversation for a lot of people. I use the analogy in The Landman. If you ever watch The Landman show, there's a moment where he's talking about the turbines that they collect. They've got the fans that collect energy from wind, and the amount of oil that goes into those, right, just to make them function. You're right. So I think there's a lot of reasons to electrify and a lot of reasons not to electrify. And I think that's the part that we're trying to find that balancing act between.
Thank you, Joe. Paris, a question for you then, I guess following on from Joe's comments. In terms of finding that balancing act, what are the primary advantages to operators in terms of going all electric? What are the kind of the big benefits or the primary benefits?
I would say I think some of the biggest improvements in induction. I mean, induction started back in like the 1950s and it was not efficient at all. And now when you look at induction now, it's 90% efficient. You're not heating up an entire kitchen space. You're putting the heat directly into the pan compared to a gas stove, which heats up. It's 40% efficient, but heats up the kitchen. So you're saving the makeup air on you're not having to heat up or cool the kitchen down, I should say.
Right.
You're not focused so much on trying to keep the cooks cool, and you're actually using the energy that you want. And anytime you use an induction, it's you set it to 50% power and you get exactly what you want. So
it's that control aspect.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, could you tell us a little bit more about your experiences of working with Adobe? Obviously, you mentioned the all-electric Founders Tower in San Jose. This was an all-electric building. It very much strikes me, it embodies Adobe's commitment to creativity, to sustainability, innovation, inclusivity. Why was that such a great project to work on? And why was it both groundbreaking, but also why was it successful ultimately?
Well, I think Adobe is such an amazing client to have those kinds of commitments, right? To be thinking about sustainability, to be thinking about innovation, and take those risks associated with the creativity that they want to enable. So, there's been so much to learn along the way in kind of identifying and mitigating those risks. But the other thing is that they really considered food so early in this project, right? It's their global headquarters. There's lots and lots of different things that they're trying to get out of this space. But food is a really big part of the culture at Adobe. And so they brought Joe, they brought myself into these design conversations before the base build was even designed. To be able to sort of really think about how is food going to fit into this entire building operationally. That enabled a lot of success for us too. But then identifying a lot of what the risks might be and having the time and the resources to sort of plan to mitigate those risks. A lot of training, a lot of, preventative maintenance, a lot of redundancy with some of our equipment, knowing that, something might not work or, we may need to pivot in how we're actually executing. All of that was considered in advance, and I don't know that we would have been as successful as we were without that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dave. Joe, let's bring you in here then. As the food service consultant on this project, Dave's point there about mitigating risks, considering the food early, there's design considerations. But describe kind of the input that you had and why it was so important that you were involved in those early conversations and how that interaction between operator, consultant, and all of the other key stakeholders really worked in practice.
Yeah, the first deck that I did when we were starting to talk about all electrification was, Gordon Ramsay with his head in his hand just shaking. Like, what are we doing, right? It was scary. It was interesting. It was exciting. It was, and I think to Dave's point, Adobe's commitment to us finding the right path to it was absolutely critical. I mean, I don't even know how many dinners we went out and tested food, talked about food, tasted food as a team. The collaboration between the architect, the engineering team, the food team, Adobe's team, our team, the collaboration was, I've never experienced that on any project, ever, never. And I would imagine a lot of my FCSI colleagues around the country have never had a project that has been that collaborative. And I think the successes that have happened, and by the way, we've made plenty of mistakes, right? We're solving for things even now that we thought were going to work really well and they didn't work as well as we thought. The outcomes of that plate of food moment are far superior because we got that collaboration and because they put so much emphasis on the food and the vision and the guest experience. The other thing I want to point out, you got to understand too, Adobe took a huge risk. They were entering into one of the largest public-private partnerships that ever happened in Silicon Valley. Some of that hasn't even panned out for them, right? And so financially, this was a huge financial burden to Adobe and remains to this day. At the end of the day, to Dave's point earlier, the client was actually the one that made it even possible. And then we just happened to all fit into the right pieces of the puzzle to build that amazing of a team. One of the project I'm working on here in Boise, we've got some of that, but it's not nearly to this will be a lifelong memory of that project, the way it came together.
I guess it helps you to benchmark, this is what good looks like, right?
100%. And when I get asked that as a consultant, like how do we make the team up to make it, what is the benchmark? That's the benchmark. And it's some of the early charrette conversations that we had where we're just throwing stuff against the wall. We had no idea. We didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. And it was super cool. And I will say a lot of that work was done pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. And so the only thing that the shutdown did was it unfortunately, it paused some of the momentum that would have gone into the actual construction. And then we had to pick things back up.
Right.
if that hadn't happened, that momentum would have carried all the way to opening day. We would have opened a little bit earlier than what we opened. And so again, I don't think that the outcome would have been necessarily a lot better or anything, but COVID did affect, some of the materials we were able to get.
Yeah.
We had shortages. Yeah. We had to change walk-ins. We had to change, things happened because of things that were outside of our control. But the team was the reason why we had so much success.
Yeah, absolutely. Paris, let's talk a little bit specifically about induction technology here. Dave's point there about the importance of considering food early and that menu planning aspect. Can you discuss a little bit or describe the role that induction technology has to play specifically in an energy efficient kitchen, and how is it helping operators to achieve fantastic menus ultimately?
I think my first response would be, repeatability. You have a unit that's providing precise temperature, precise control, and some of our units you can even program into there. Like, I could put a pot on the stove and hit the rice setting and you get perfect rice every single time. Or if it's a stock pot that you put a probe into and you have it holding at a perfect simmer where you're not boiling a stock and making it cloudy, it's providing that repeatable results. Yeah. And you're consistently delivering the same thing every single time. It's like if I go to my house and put a pot of water and I turn it to medium, and I go to your house and I put a pot of water and turn it to medium, we're going to get two different results. Induction, you're going to get the same thing every time.
Fantastic. Dave, I guess there's an extension to Paris's point there. There has been some resistance from chefs, resistance to induction. Are you seeing that changing at all? Is it still a challenge to get chefs to embrace induction? Is that a thing at the par? How's the narrative about the benefits of embracing induction changing, would you say?
I think the narrative's changing really quickly. I think an important part of it is the hands-on experience that a lot of chefs are able to get. There's more induction technology out there for chefs to get that firsthand experience with and see all those benefits that Paris was talking about. When you set something to a certain setting, it's going to behave the same way every single time. And chefs are all about consistency and quality and getting that consistent product for all of their guests. So once you start to have that firsthand experience, it really changes your mind. But, the generation of restaurants that I grew up in and a lot of my colleagues grew up in, we loved fire. That was a huge part of what we did. And but when you look at one of these stoves, you can get really tactile about it and say, look at those flames. Those aren't just heating the food. Those are heating the air around it. When you lift that pan off the burner and that flame's still going, what's that doing to the air quality and the air temperature in the kitchen? When you lift up a pan and toss it around versus leaving a pan in place and using a utensil to move the food, that puts wear and tear on your body. And when you have 15, 20, 25 years of kitchen experience, it makes a really, really big difference.
Takes its toll, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's really just about getting that firsthand experience, extolling those benefits that really affect the food and the quality of life for the chef. The sustainability benefits, as Joe was talking about, it's highly politicized. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can spin that. But food quality, consistency, and the well-being of the chefs, can't argue with any of those.
Absolutely. Joe, Dave's point there about first-hand experience, the importance of that and extolling the benefits. Training clearly plays a huge part here. Could you talk a little bit about the kind of training on induction equipment that you recommend, that you advocate for operators, and how do you keep that consistency of training going on, throughout the piece?
It's ironic that we're on a panel with Vollrath and Dave to have that part of this conversation, because we did try some stuff that I think was a little bit outside the box. Not all of it worked. In fact, a lot of it didn't work, but we were thinking about how do you create that more familiar feel. We played around with several iterations of a French top, right? Can we somehow make it feel like a French top? Because that's something that some chefs are used to, right? And what a lot of people don't know, cast iron is actually the best type of pan to use on induction. So by having a cast iron surface, we actually can, the heat is more evenly dispersed. It's perfect, right? It's the best metal to conduct. So we played around with that, and some of it succeeded, some of it failed. The thought process, though, was, can we get a chef excited about induction by giving them something that felt more familiar, and then take the top off and make it induction again? Unfortunately, best laid plans, right? What what I think we need to do is we need to get it in their hands. We need to educate them. And what the operators need to do, and this is back to where the collaboration happens, they need to allow their team time outside of a busy service, especially in B&I, right? Like, I mean, we're feeding thousands of people a day.
Yep.
I mean, in B&I, they're feeding the same thousands of people 250 days a year. So the creativity and the amount of menus and the diversity in the menus that they create is insane compared to like a restaurant, right?
For sure.
So you couple all that in, what the operators have to do is they have to have the time built into their financials and all the other things for training and for getting culinarians in front of this equipment, giving them time to do R&D and recipe development on it. Because once they actually use it, I think that the adoption rate becomes much, much higher. When they think about it as a theory and they've never actually cooked on it, they're going to be resistant.
Yes.
And so education has got to be key to that. And I think it's a consultant's job to go into these projects early and have those conversations with the operator. Right. Because if we're not having those conversations, we're in a lot of ways, we're misrepresenting. We're going to build these kitchens. These teams are going to get in there and they're going to be extremely disappointed. They're going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And we want to try and make people comfortable through education. I think that's the mission.
Absolutely. Harris, what's your kind of take on that? How are you and the team at Vollrath, how are you getting chefs excited about things like the benefits of energy usage, total cost of ownership, and also what kind of feedback are you getting from the chef community about the benefits of induction?
Definitely the number one feedback I get is it does take a learning curve to go from gas to you're so used to like putting a pan on, you turn the burner on, and you wait a couple minutes for that pan to get hot.
Yeah.
With induction, you put it on there, 30 seconds, you're already at like 450 degrees. It's a demo I do over and over where I'll put a pan on, I'll put a infrared thermometer on it, and seconds, you're instantly heat. But the total cost of ownership, like that part of it, being able to take something that has repeatable results, you're saving money on food waste, on not having to, that if you set it to 50 or if you do this and that on the induction, you're going to get the same thing every single time. The learning curve of it, though, is probably the biggest hurdle that we have to go through. It's if you're trying to do a quesadilla and the recipe tells you to start with medium heat, can't do that on induction. It's my general rule of thumb is like, whatever recipe tells you, minus 40% of that. If it says high heat, go to medium. So
can I add a point?
Go for it, Jay. Yeah.
So he said it without, I'm going to say it just to add on to it. So induction is the key to that, because conventional electric, that's not the case. And that's the thing that, right? So electrification as an entirety is not the same as what induction is doing. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. So yeah, induction's a great example of where electrification actually works. It's saving the environment. It's creating sustainability. We're using less energy. Total cost of ownership. That's what he said.
Yeah.
So that's not the case in all pieces of equipment.
Right.
And I think that's really important for folks to realize.
So how do you help with that education? What's the role of the consultant here to help with that storytelling?
Set up the education is the first step, and I don't think that all consultants are created equally on that. We make sure that every one of our projects, we're doing that throughout the project, early on, getting the equipment list to the operator, making sure that they know what's coming down the pipe, making sure that we're working with the KEC or the dealer to ensure that the proper trainings are happening, talking to them about the things that are going to be different. Like most of these operators have operated in many kitchens over their careers. Yeah. What's going to be different in this kitchen than what they're used to? Let's make sure that we get them training and education on that, pointing those things out.
Right.
So it's back to that collaborative, right? And so even during programming and visioning and schematic design and that initial equipment spec, bringing the operator in that conversation is extremely important. And I think it's a step that sometimes gets missed.
Yeah.
Now, I also say, we're not always building the kitchen for the operator. A lot of times, like even in Adobe's case, Bon Appetit may or may not always be the operator of Adobe. They're securely there now, but you never know. So at the moment, I'm building a kitchen for Adobe. Bon Appetit is an influencer to that. And so that relationship and that collaboration is extremely important. We find the balance. And that's, I think about what consultant means. That's what we're doing. We're bringing all of those pieces of the puzzle together and then putting forward the right game plan.
Awesome. Great answer, Jay. Thank you. Go for it, Paris.
Caveat to that. Leading on the manufacturer as well, like that we're training and providing all the resources that we can to those dealers or to the consultants, that it's not like, oh, we make a product, here you go, now our hands are off, but fulfilling and making sure we're going through every single step to make sure that our product is installed and put in its best light that we possibly can.
From the operator's perspective, it's who's getting these trainings, and what kind of language are we using? What points are we focusing on so that it's really going to resonate with that end user, so that we can build a culture around it. We can make a commitment to say, this is how we're cooking now. This is how we're thinking about food and processes. If our leadership in the kitchens are bought in, they can cascade that message down to their cooks and their entire team, and everybody's bought in.
And David, as an extension of that, cascading information down, how are you factoring in, how are you managing the whole repair and maintenance kind of mantra as well? Like, how are you managing that whole part of the puzzle?
So frankly, that's been our biggest challenge. I think it's getting to the point where we have really, really specialized processes, specialized parts, and specialized knowledge that allow for the right repairs and maintenance. So we've had a few strategies that we've had to put in place. Preventative maintenance schedules are more important than they've ever been. It's really been a huge part of how we're thinking about, maintaining this equipment and just keeping our kitchen healthy. We keep a lot of parts on hand because parts can be really difficult to get. Again, very specialized at this point. So when we're starting to see that there are certain things that we're seeing a pattern of, we're going to keep those parts on hand. We even have a little bit of redundancy in our equipment, a few more hubs that we need for the induction, so that if something does go down and we're waiting on a repair, we can still cook, right? And we have a few different spaces that we can cook in as well. So I think those are really probably the biggest points. But when people are coming to service this equipment, we don't know a lot about it. I mean, I know how a gas oven works. I've done repairs on those myself in a pinch at a restaurant, right? But I can't get into an induction hub and start to do those repairs myself. So just asking questions and listening and trying to understand more and more about how these things work, not just from Paris and Joe, but from the people that actually come onto site and repair these things. Just learning as much as we can. If for no other reason, there's a language to speak around this stuff. What are these parts called? It's not the same as these things we're used to. So the more we can just kind of pick up that language, it allows us to get better service more quickly and more efficiently from our partners.
Great answer, Dave. Thank you. Joe, I think a really nice phrase there Dave used there was about asking questions, the importance of asking questions. What additional information, what questions do consultants need to ask from the equipment manufacturing or the manufacturing equipment community in order to ease something like the whole specification process? And how do you ensure that things like smallware, accessories are not an afterthought, they're not overlooked in the specification process, especially for something like induction?
It's a big question because it's something that our firm has been trying to figure out, because there is a line, right? Typically, if it's hardwired, plumbed in, or bolted down, or suspended from the ceiling, it's in our spec. If it's a spatula, right, we're not touching it.
Yep.
More and more, we are looking at kind of the small electrics a lot. So food processing, vac sealing, sous vide, those types of machines. We're looking at how are we going to power them? What are they sitting on? Where do they live? How do we store them? But as we've been toying with this, then you get into the where are we storing all of the smallwares, right? And the other thing that I think consultants do have a piece to this pie, so to speak, is we got to be reminding our clients that, hey, there's also this smallwares thing that you're going to have to do. Hey, we just built you a kitchen with, you need induction ready pans. And those are not cheap. And there's some good stuff out on the market and some bad stuff out on the market. And so I think as a consultant, even though we're not specifying that equipment, I think it's extremely important that we understand it. We're talking about it. We're talking to the client and the operator so that they're budgeted properly for it. I mean, I've seen some of these kitchens where you get to the very end and then all of a sudden, the smallwares list comes in and it's $250,000 and nobody budgeted for it, right? And so I think that's a really important point, Mike, is that consultants are supposed to be, I've used this phrase before, we got to take it all the way to the ground. We got to take it all the way to the moment where his guys are cooking in the kitchen. What does that look like? What does that need?
And work back from there.
Exactly. Our job is to take it from ideation all the way to ground.
Yep.
All the way to that plate of food moment where we're handing a plate of food to the guest. Our role as a consultant is to look at every step along the way. And so even though we're not specifying those wares, I think it's important that we're knowledgeable about them and that we're talking about them at the appropriate times.
Absolutely. Paris, I guess from your point of view then, from your perspective, how are you getting closer to consultants to ensure that that part of the process is as smooth as possible, that everyone's aware of what's coming down the road for things like smallware, specification, that kind of thing?
I think a lot of it comes down to like the chef, the guy that's actually running that kitchen. They're the ones thinking of, I need a spatula, I need a whisk, I need tablespoons, measuring cups, those kind of things. And I guess on the Vollrath side of it, our whole focus on our smallwares is that total cost of ownership part of it, where how many times do you want to buy a whisk? How many times do you want to buy a spatula? If it's the cheapest thing on the shelf, but you have to buy it 4 times, is it really the cheapest thing? And I think that's kind of our whole focus on smallwares. And that's where that whole piece of that total cost of ownership is on our smallware side, because lifetime guarantee and you're going to buy it once. And that's the guarantee part of it. And a lot of people don't understand that when they're a chef and like, it's a whisk is a whisk, but why only have to buy one whisk ever again? No one ever thinks about. As a manufacturer, that's what our focus is. And getting that message out there has probably been our hardest message to get out. It's like, you buy one whisk, you buy one spoon, you buy one spatula. And it's like, this spatula alone is hands down one of the best in the market. And not a lot of people know that. And the engineering that goes into this is significant. Like the fact that there's the 2 little dots that keep it so that that spatula doesn't sit on the table and get dirty. And it's the little details that people don't think about on the smallware side.
Absolutely. Let's do a little bit of crystal ball gazing here. Final question, and if you could all answer this one if possible, please. Can you predict the future of electrified kitchens and talk about the important role that induction technology specifically has within that? Paris, let's go for you first, please.
Definitely, everyone's trying to reduce their carbon footprint. A lot of cities and states are kind of going away from gas and natural sources, and electricity has been huge. It's growing nonstop. It's the most efficient. I mean, to say it like you get in a Tesla and you step on that gas and you're in that gas pedal and you're gone. It's controlled power. And I would say that's the same thing with like induction. It's controlled power. You look at Europe, they're almost completely, they focus a lot of their kitchens are induction electric because they don't have the natural resources and abundance of natural resources that we use. So if anything, recopy what Europe's doing. I mean, it's going to be the future of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Paris. So same question to you, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sustainability story is a huge part of it. I think, getting away from fossil fuels and looking to different energy sources to generate that electricity, that's a one-way momentum that I think we're just going to continue to see everywhere. So you kind of got to get on board with it. And the later you get on board, the less adaptable you and your operation and your food is going to be, right? So I think that's a huge part of it. But I mean, to think even bigger, like food has become such a big part of culture. It always has been, but it continues to be more and more of a big part of culture. You can go anywhere in the country, find fantastic restaurants that are big parts of the local culture, and the chefs that drive that, they deserve a comfortable environment to work in. And induction technology specifically, the way that it just focuses the energy into the pan, into the food, it's not heating the kitchen in a way that makes it uncomfortable to work in. It's not affecting the air quality. It's allowing you to sort of be a little more methodical with how you're using your body in the kitchen. It's just sort of, to me, a way to pay homage and respect to the chefs that are actually producing this food.
Yeah. Love that answer. Joe?
So I'm going to use one more quick example. Recirculating dishwashers, ventless dishwashers. What a lot of people don't realize is not only are they extremely water efficient, they're also extremely energy efficient because they're pumping a very large percentage of the heat load back into the water. They're not actually exhausting it out. So that's another example of something where we are actually reducing the energy load and we've gone ventless, and we've created a better environment for the chefs when the HVAC is taken care of properly. So, there's so many brilliant blips of this.
Yeah.
And then there's epic failure. So
yeah, fascinating. A huge subject and lots to say about it. So thankful to have a brilliant set of panelists here today. Paris, Dave, and Joe, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Vollrath, for your support. And thank you for watching. Thank you.